Today is going to be very interesting. I'm not really sure exactly what's going to happen, just like every single time. But when I started, mapping out the schedule for this course, I felt like it was like I had to finish on Easter Sunday because we were going to do some kind of resurrection activation, whatever that meant. Um, and then, as I was saying yesterday, someone sent me this info from this other lady. She does I'm not exactly sure what she does, but Sandra Walter is her name, and she was talking about there being a resurrection portal that was opening um, at this time. So it's just interesting how all these things are coming together. So we've been through the victim, which the integration is from powerlessness into power. That's the mental perception center. And it's integrating both the victim being that which can only experience a subtraction of value from its experience. And then there's the performer, which is it's a slightly different type of victim energy, where it is attempting to make sure that everything inside of it or externally is operating in a particular way in order for it to basically feel okay. And then we have in the heart space, which is the shadow side of the heart is pain. And the light integration side is pleasure. Not that there's anything wrong with pain. Pain is, super important in the journey. And it actually doesn't stop. I feel like your pain becomes more intimate the more awake that you become. And then also at the same time, there's less things that make you feel pain, because pain is the medicine which strips you of identity. Pain is literally a sensation of identity being flushed out of the nervous system. So when we are in a lot of pain, we are basically getting a huge upgrade in our sense of self, and the sense of ourself can extend into the world. So when there's a great feeling of disparity between who we are or how the world is and where we want it to be, that chasm is essentially the pain, and the pain is bringing everything together, because pain is in that sense is really just coming to terms with what's actually happening, and not everything that's happening is something that we're going to like. And there can be, in certain spiritual understanding, this idea that you have to like everything or that you have to enjoy it. And for me, this is really counterintuitive, because to force yourself to like something, to force yourself to enjoy something, can really be creating more time for yourself in situations where you don't actually enjoy things. Because if a experience is over here and it's something that you don't like, but you're trying to like it, in that essence, you are pushing away from the authenticity with what that is trying to bring forward through into you. So if things suck, just admit how shitty they are. And that will actually be more powerful in bringing your nervous system into okayness than trying to make it okay by trying to feel better about it. Trying to feel better about it happens when it doesn't matter how you feel about it. You don't like it, you don't like it. Okay, no big deal. So you have the hero, and then you also have the rebel. right? And both of these functions uh, are purposeful and are necessary for the journey. The hero is what is going to take, the hero is like a bridge across the chest from the mind into the gut. And the hero is going to take that victim energy, and it's going to, because it has, the hero is what has absorbed enough power in order to make movement, to make choices, to deliver itself from some sort of victimhood into deeper presence. And as that occurs, it itself dissolves, because the hero is what requires victims in order to have a role. But in the meantime, the hero is what's going to develop your sense of self as you're transitioning out of the victim into presence. And we've talked about it in our community before, about there being a time and a place for when you need to change basically how you're feeling. There's so long that you can spend in feeling awful, and there's an intimacy to that that's extremely important. To not try and change it, to not try and shift it, manipulate it, to make it into anything else. And until it feels authentic to move from that space, stay there, stay in the how shitty it is. Because that's just going to wear out the victim, because that gets really boring really fast. When trying to push away from it, you're just extending your time in it. So by just letting yourself essentially rot in that energy, that the rotting, just like in a forest, as things rot, it becomes the nutrients for the next step, which would be those little seeds underground growing. And as I've been sharing throughout these series, we've been planting seeds. And so by allowing yourself to steep in the rot, what comes through after that is what's being developed through the hero. And the hero is going to give birth to these new seedlings inside of you. And what that looks like is essentially that question that we asked in the anatomy of knowing. What is nourishing me and what is not nourishing me? What gets me off is even the better question. But sometimes that's not accessible when we're in that state of, just despair. Because it's not meant to be. Despair is meant to be in a space of despair. So when you're in despair, there's not much movement out of that. But at a certain point, you get bored of it. And then it's like, okay, well, what little thing can I do? If it's accessible to you, what little thing can I do to just make this day a little bit better? And you start moving from that space. And it's not going to be a sudden shift. And the reason it's not going to be a sudden shift is because it is essentially reestablishing a sense of resiliency. Because those that are in despair and have been shoved down by life for so long don't yet recognize, and this is getting into presence, the value of what those experiences gave them, which is resiliency. But the one that's in despair is in a cocoon of realizing resiliency and appreciating the one that went through it all. When I was growing up, receiving daily abuse from my father, and then in school being a closeted kid going through private Christian school, getting teased every day, like from every single angle, I wasn't really having a good time. And the crescendo of my despair was when I was like 16, 17, and everything came to a head, and I actually almost killed myself. And in that moment of despair, of almost going to take that action, I thought, like, I can't do that to the world. Like, I'm needed and I am amazing because, like, look at everything that I've been through. And it was a moment of realizing everything that I had been through in my life. And if I can handle that, which up until that point was only just a fraction of what I would go through, was what cultivated me. But I was just in the beginning of understanding that cultivation. So, regardless of how long your crucifixion is going to be, the crucifixion is basically everything that has felt wrong, right? If we're doing this on Easter, I guess there's going to be a lot of biblical references today, but the understanding of, like, okay, as an analogy, what is the crucifixion? The idea of, Jesus dying on the cross for all of our sins, whatever. Great story. Who know if it's true for you? Amazing. If it's not, just as fine. It's just an analogy, is the way that I'm using it for here. So the crucifixion time is basically all that time in your life that you are really feeling the pain of this human experience. And it's the part of the pain where it doesn't feel like it's doing any good for you at all. And that is basically the crucifixion of the victim. And the victim is what dies. And in a brief moment, dead there on the cross is the hero. In that individual's perception, dying for what has been wrong in the world, right? To make right. That would be the hero. But on the other side of this is then presence, that which recognizes the value of why all those things occurred. Like put yourself in the imagination of, like, exactly the way the Christian story is played out, and what would be in that character's mind, Jesus dying for everyone's sins, right? That would be this, like, presence of realizing, like, all the things, like all that's happened and how it was resolved, and the value and purpose of that. It's very powerful. Now, it's also hilarious that I can even, use that as an example, because in a way I feel like as I'm speaking, I'm going through my own process with this, because, I had so much angst, anger, and just friction with this idea of God, because it was always an externalized idea of something that was constantly judging me, looking at me, watching what I'm doing, making sure that I'm not, I'm doing the right thing or whatever. And that sense of perception that I grew up with was actually, in the beginning, me engaging with the first distortion away from original innocence. And when I came up with the idea of original innocence, or when it came to me, It was the rebel that came up with that idea, the archetype of the rebel, which said, this whole original sin, or this, humanity experiences it whether they call it original sin or not, but this idea that there's something wrong with you. It's been so sewn into the fabric of human DNA at this point. It doesn't matter if you grew up religious or not. And I so did not agree with that. It just did not make sense to me that I could somehow be born and there was something that I could do wrong. Like, I didn't even choose to be born, at least consciously in this form, right? I didn't choose to be born. I was just born and here I am. How could I do anything wrong? I didn't even make this choice. There is that spiritual idea of, yes, you made this choice to be here and you chose all these things. And that's great. But it's not the full acceptance of what this experience is, which is that you didn't choose it. It's being able to hold both. And that is a deeper integration of what we went over in the anatomy of knowing, which is the connection between the human and divine and merging them together. And it's holding both of those pieces simultaneously. Original innocence isn't something that can even be moved from, because anything that would be moving from it would be from it. Does that even make sense, for something to move away from original innocence when that is all that exists? When you really boil it down, it doesn't even make sense. But we can perceive it as something separate because those that essentially engage with the software of separation, which is what we've done, we've really engaged with a software of wrongness. What does it feel like if it was possible to be separated from source? And then we've engaged with essentially a simulation of what it would be like if that were possible. And so it appears that, yes, things have gone completely wrong, but things have only gone completely wrong because on the other side of it, we chose to go through this experiment. The things that have happened to us because of that, places where we were wronged, that's not something that we chose in this form, perhaps in another. But that's kind of irrelevant when you're trying to integrate your consciousness into reality. And why would we even want to integrate? What does that even mean? Everyone's like, oh, like ascension, everyone wants to ascend. What does that even mean? Has anyone ever thought of what does it mean to ascend? And why would you want to do it? Because there's this sense and energy of the grass is greener on the other side. What integration is and what it means is the grass is greener where I am, because that's where I am. The grass is green wherever I am. And I'm saying that as the collective I am. Where we are now is where we want to be. But until that feels authentic, we're going through the integration process of that. Because eventually we will realize the contribution that we're making on a daily basis just by existing more consciously than others are capable of doing so yet. We don't have to like our experience in order to be effective. We just have to be more authentic than the world is capable of doing. For example, you know, someone sent me the documentary Seaspiracy recently. And I was like, okay, let's watch this documentary. And I was like shocked and like brought to tears that this is like happening on our planet. And what did I do? Someone offered me like sushi the other day, and I was just kind of like, you know what? Like, yeah, it's yummy, but like maybe, I'll have some later. But for right now, I think I'm just gonna avoid having seafood for just to like integrate the knowing of what's happening. If I can just have one less meal containing fish, maybe it will help contribute to the shift of this particular thing because it was brought to my attention. I didn't know that was happening. So that's one way the hero is used in consciousness. The hero is not something that just goes away. It gets integrated in the form that it doesn't require things to be in a state of victimhood in order for it to be powerful. Equally, the rebel gets integrated, but it is still useful in presence. Because at the sum of all of it, right? Because there's the integration of the victim, the performer, the rebel, and the hero, 4 different archetypes that integrate into the gut, which is presence. And presence is that which always receives value. That doesn't mean it's always having a good time. There's a difference. There are days that I have that I feel horrible. Does that do anything to the quality of my presence? No. Because presence isn't a feeling. Presence is what's watching everything and being authentic with the experience and understands the value of why it's there. Even if you don't see the value, you can't actually be out. There's no such thing as out of presence. That's the funny thing. We're integrating presence, but then like at the end of it, there's no such thing as being out of presence. That doesn't even make sense. How can you be out of presence? If you were out of presence, you wouldn't even be interfacing with this reality. What is interfacing with this reality is present. You are already present. You're just not being authentic with how you feel about it. That's really the only difference. And when people say presence, that's what they really mean. They're trying to point to authenticity, but they think that presence means that they're going to enjoy everything. And that's not true. People want ascension to mean that they're going to feel good all the time. Like I said at the beginning of this series, there were months recently where I felt agonizing pain every single day, emotionally and partially physically too. And the physical pain was because I couldn't move because of the emotional pain, which then deteriorated the quality of my physical capacity. And I was aware, and then it was like all these things snowballing together, like, oh my God, there's just so much pain. Was I aware of the value of that though? Absolutely. And I knew that on the other side of it would be an extraordinary expansion because I'd never gone through something that deeply painful. And what did I knew that pain was stripping me of identity. And I just sat there burning every single day, knowing that I was being liberated in a way that I couldn't have dreamed of previously. I didn't even know this kind of integration was possible. And that journey will continue. And that's really, the resurrection in itself is the resurrection of your inner shaman, and not some kind of shaman that's going to make it all magically better. The type of shaman that understands why things are happening, even if it doesn't know why things are happening. It's that understanding that everything is providing value, and cleaning up the old archetype of the shaman, and reintroducing a new one here just with what I'm about to say. The old archetype of the shaman either blamed others or itself for how it was feeling. But we're moving out of the old paradigm of the shaman, which functions in cause and effect, into simply interfacing. And that aspect of the shaman just recognizes value. And it doesn't blame itself or others for how it feels. It is just a space through which everything is moving through. And you don't have to like it either. It's not required. Trying to like it will just keep you in looping in time in an experience where you don't like things and try to like them, which sounds horrible. But eventually, that process of going through the pain and the despair, at a certain point, you begin to just like it was a certain point, like amongst all of this tumultuous sensation that was happening inside of me recently, where I was just like, I think I'm just gonna keep going about my day. I think I'm just gonna go to that ecstatic dance, even though I feel awful. I think it was like all of a sudden, no matter how I'm feeling, I'm still gonna live my life. Like it was the idea of, because it felt so interminable. Like this is gonna happen forever. It felt like it was never going to end. And I was like, okay, if it's never gonna end, well, I might as well enjoy myself while it's happening to some degree, whatever degree I can. And a lot of the times I was there like kind of like frowning, like like, okay, this is cool, like I'm at the beach, I still feel like shit, but like at least I'm under the sun. Like um so it's that piece of you. uh what's better than feeling good about everything is feeling okay no matter how you're gonna feel. And that's truly liberation. And when you really understand what I'm saying is, I'm everything that I've been saying and am saying related to the anatomy of awakening is essentially me trying to kill the healing journey. Because if you're okay with how you feel, regardless of if you're okay with how you feel, no matter what it is, then there's no sense of trying to use healing modalities in order to shift your experience. And you know what happens when you cease trying to change your experience? Your experience changes. I like these words used to come to me like when I was in high school, and I never knew what they meant, but I just kind of like went along with it, and I would say it randomly as like in weird moments. I don't even, it's weird, but I said things can only change when you no longer need them to change. True change is when you no longer need it to change, because then it's no longer based on the shifting sands of time, space, and form. When it's okay that things remain the same or change in radical succession, then your ability to be in that okayness, regardless of what's happening, is massively amplified. And the more that you're okay with your experience, the faster you're able to go through all the changes that are required. And most of those, 99% of the time, are going to be happening to you, through you, for you, through the sensation of what you're feeling on a day-to-day basis. And the part of us that wants to always change how we're feeling is the same part of us that's actually holding on to how we're feeling, because we think it's ours, something to heal, to change. When we're okay with how we feel, even if we're not okay with it, being okay, it just means this is how I feel, the authenticity of how you're feeling. That in itself begins to shift things without you really having to do anything. Because that really that's all life is trying to get us to do. Integration is authenticity. To be integrated as consciousness in human form means to be authentic. And anytime that we're coming up against strife, all life is really asking us to do is to just be authentic. Because authenticity is what will free you from all spiritual ideas. Because spiritual ideas are basically all the things that humans have tried to come up with in order to feel okay about their experience by making it different. And there is, space for that, of course. There are times when that's like, no, like you should just look at it from a different angle. It's okay. And then there are other times where you shouldn't look at it from a different angle. You should just be authentic with how you're feeling. And only you are the one that's capable of knowing when that is. And it's a delicate balance between shifting your perspective in order to feel better and just being authentic with how it is. And the way you usually know that, the way you know that you're supposed to just be authentic is when you're trying to reframe it and it's not working. Anytime you try and reframe something and it doesn't actually work, it's because life isn't asking for the reframe. You already know how to do that. We're all highly intelligent and able to see things from different perspectives that make us feel better about things. And when it does make you feel better, it means that you're accessing a higher vibrational viewpoint of that particular thing. And so, thank you. Little blackout in the kitchen. I think that was it. You'll always know when to be authentic to the experience, which is always, but when that authenticity feels like, oh, like, I mean, I feel bad about it, but I think I just need to see this from a different perspective. You always know when to go either direction, and you're probably going to try both anyways. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. You just need to be with the one that's already survived all of it, that's already been through everything. And once you can do that, then you can go into the self-development, because then you actually know who you are. Prior to that, you're just trying to change yourself into something that feels more agreeable to the ideas of what you think you should be in order to feel okay. Self-realization is just realizing what, who has gone through everything that you've gone through. And that is the recognition of resiliency coming alive within you at the rate in which you recognize it. And life will continue to get crazier until you begin recognizing what is resilient, what's untouchable. And when we're really in the thick of it, sometimes that's literally what's just looking or listening to the moment. And that can give us just a minuscule amount of space, enough, but that's all that's required in order to recognize okayness. Because if you can just recognize that tiniest amount of space that is okay, just what's looking, just what's hearing, just what's feeling, tasting, smelling, that part of you is always okay. And as that okayness is recognized, then it's like it spreads at whatever rate is necessary to contribute to the integration, which is through the doorway of authenticity. Because presence is that which is always in recognition of value. And what I just talked about is paradise. Paradise is that space that is untouchable. The promised land is not something outside of you. It's a place inside of you that reshapes and reforms everything that you see outside of yourself. Waiting for heaven is what happens when you're looking to the outside world to be different in order for you to be okay. That's how the spiritual journey has been taught, is for you to make sure everything outside of you is okay. Waiting for heaven. Oh, this is just a mess. All of this is not okay, which is going from the spectrum from the victim to the hero. Varying degrees of feeling a subtraction of value. Everything outside of you is adding value to your life, whether it looks horrific or amazing. And I know this because of my own experiences in having incredible life experiences and also having horrific life experiences. And if someone were to actually ask me like what my favorite experience in life was or is, I probably wouldn't tell you like all the exciting things. I would tell you all the things that made me who I am, which were in themselves horrific experiences. And I wouldn't want them to be different. I wouldn't wish it upon others. But in my perspective, they would be lucky to go through what I went through because it would shape them in the same way. And each of us at some point gets to say that I'm lucky to have gone through everything that I did. And those that feel like life has shit on them the most, trust me, I've felt that way for a long time, in moments of like just the despair of like, God, like, why does it have to be so intense? Filtered out by many moments of understanding that, and always having the orientation towards life of knowing that everything was a sort of initiation, bringing me, I'm supposed to get something from it. At the time, that's what I always said. I'm getting something from this. I don't know what it is, but it was the part of me that was always looking for value, regardless of the experience. Like I'm being replayed this video of me in the dining room, my dad in the living room, and him screaming at me and me just standing there silently. And I remember just like thanking the moment because it was bringing me something that at that moment I was unaware of, but I knew that it was providing me some sort of something that I would use at some point. But you don't have to be aware of that while you're going through it. You just have to recognize this looking backwards, that all of those things were bringing you to where you are now. And even if you don't like where you are now, it's just another moment of clearing out identity in order for you to get to your core self. And that core self is paradise itself. Paradise is the silence and the space. Presence is what animates what is animated by that emptiness. And presence is what interfaces with life. Sometimes the best way to getting to a better experience is accepting that it may never get better. Because what is despair other than thinking it may never get better? And hope gets in the way of the full initiation. God, I hope this gets better. It's a nice wish, but sometimes that gets in the way of us truly being authentic to the crucifixion process. You know, and today we're rewriting that code of consciousness from the martyr into something marvelous, which is you. The anatomy of awakening is just understanding the structure of how life works. And when you understand how life works, it's much easier to sink into that spaciousness of paradise. Paradise doesn't mean everything's always happy-go-lucky. But when and as you continue to sink more and more into just the smallest amount of okayness within yourself, it does begin to shift your experience into something that is quite delightful most of the time. But when we stop grading ourselves, when we stop measuring our value based on the comings and goings of life experience, emotions, thoughts, experiences, all of those things, then we come into a sort of causeless confidence, a causeless joy. I was sitting just kind of in a still happiness, not like ecstatic this morning, and my partner was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, it's just funny because to me it's like him not necessarily fully understanding the quality of happiness that I was in, because it doesn't need to be ecstatic. I think he's used to me seeing me in a more ecstatic state, because I usually am in an ecstatic state. And I said, yeah, I'm just happy. It's like a different kind of happiness. It's just still and silent. And I would rather have that 90% of the time than be, in a constant ecstatic state. It's not necessary. We think that's what we want, but when we don't need it to be that way, you'd be surprised how often it actually shows up. When you don't need life to be ridiculously amazing, it is ridiculously amazing, because then you're getting off every single moment on all the value that everything is providing you. Even like last year, just like a moment changed my life when my friend just like randomly stopped talking to me. My apartment like started, all of a sudden there was water just coming out the walls, and this guy that I wanted to date like said no, like I don't want to be with you, blah blah blah. So like all these things within a 24-hour period, and I'm just sitting there like, oh my god, I can't even believe what's happening. And literally as I was thinking that, water started coming out from the bottom of my walls. So it's just like life is like, oh, like here, like the straw that broke the camel's back, here's like a whole package of straws. And in that moment, I just started laughing because I realized like it was a moment of recognizing resiliency. And if life is going to like shake up all the feathers of, I don't even know the analogy I'm trying to use, but if life is going to shake things up that much, the chaos, the confusion, the I don't understand is basically the mind incapable of following in a linear path a quantum leap of reality. Chaos, confusion, these are ways the mind doesn't understand and feels the sensation of a quantum jump. When we're quantum jumping is usually when it feels the worst. And recognizing that you're going through a quantum jump can give you enough space to feel good about how crappy you feel. And then it's only a matter of how much can I take care of myself right now as I go through this upgrade process. Some upgrades feel good. A lot of upgrades feel horrific. When we're not stuck on making things different, things made different effortlessly comes to us. Because part of the integration of your consciousness is integrating the effort because most of the time, the one that's efforting in regards to emotion, thoughts, feelings, or general experiences is the aspect of ourselves that's trying to change things in order to feel better. And as we cease to attempt to make things better, then better comes. Because the only thing that can cease trying to make things better is receiving the value of how they are, even if it doesn't like it. Things are going to be hard, but all you have to do is breathe as it's happening. And I mean, you can try not breathing, but breathing is going to effortlessly happen on your behalf. So really, there's nothing to do. But if there is something for you to do, to effort, it would just be taking care of yourself. Like, you'd be surprised on my worst days if I just like give myself a manicure, I feel so fucking good. Like this simple gesture of like taking care of my nails, even if I don't do the cuticles, I just like clip the nails, make it like, nice and fresh. Like somehow that elicits a sense of wellness. And you know what? On some of my worst days, finding the motivation to cut my nails has been extremely hard. Because there are days like that when literally just the act of clipping one's nails feels like the most incredible effort. Because it's possible to feel that low and for a long time. But the thing about feeling good, about motivation, as we're integrating this hero piece, because the hero has to essentially die when you cease the old version of the hero has to die. And as it integrates, we go into this place of despair, of not changing things, of there's no use to any of this. And that's basically the hero running through its last remaining bits of victim energy, as it itself is a subtle aspect of victimhood. But as it integrates, then all of a sudden there's this spaciousness of, okay, I need to do things that make me feel good. But it's not coming from a place of getting away from anything. It's just for the sake of feeling good. And you only get the energy and the motivation to feel good by going and doing it even when you don't feel it. Because the energy and the motivation comes as you take the action. It's actually science. And that's the aspect of the hero that is the integrated form. It's really our masculine energy capable of driving us forward in happier and healthier ways. And just as we go into a meditation here in a moment, just going over again the 3 perception centers. Original innocence is where we begin. It's in the gut, and it's where we reintegrate back into the place that we never truly left, but where we perceive the journey from does shift as things get fragmented through a process of basically wrongness and not feeling okay. So not okay or wrongness is the first distortion away from original innocence. And that fragments consciousness up into the heart. And the heart, basically its function is moving things from pain into pleasure. And in the pain, the shadow side of the heart, it goes either into the rebel or the hero. Usually as we're fragmenting out of original innocence, we go into the rebel, because the rebel usually shows up, even as early as like 2 years old, right? Tantrums, toddler tantrums. The rebel is cultivating its sense of identity through pushing away through those that hurt it and associate to those people, namely authority. And the hero will try and, fix things, change things in order to get from wrongness into okayness. The martyr, the one that's always trying to like save itself or others. These aren't wrong things. It's just an inflated tendency towards this. But as life continues to go through its process of initiation, you get fragmented again from the rebel or the hero, both, further, and then that consciousness rises up into the mind, and then we're perceiving reality through the mind. And that's complete victimhood. Not that the mind is a bad place to perceive reality from, just that in the fragmented aspect of the mind, We perceive life as only subtracting value, which is the victim. The victim can only perceive subtraction. And the victim is protecting basically consciousness from fragmenting anymore. And it is experienced as either the performer or just like straight up victim. The performer is almost like it's almost like less victimized energy than just straight up victim, because the performer is still trying to keep things safe for itself by moving or changing itself, its own inner reality. How can I show up in a different way to make people feel like they'll like me so that they won't hurt me? That's the performer. So now I'm seeing that there's, the further fragmentation of that is the victim. And the victim just, it's not even, it's that person that you've seen that is just constantly complaining about everything. Nothing is working out for itself. And that's okay. That just means that person needs some time alone, because the victim is just trying, it has the biggest bumper. It's just trying to create space so it doesn't get hurt. Because it's felt completely powerless in its life. So the integration of that is to move into power. And the first realization around that is realizing that it is actually impossible to be a victim. Because to be a victim requires that you say that you were victimized by it, or that the world is being victimized by usually them. The victim only sees a subtraction of value from its own experience and then projects that onto the world as only experiencing subtractions of value from its experience. And just recognizing that you're the one that's saying that gives you just a little bit of power. Understanding that it requires you to say that. It requires you to perceive it that way. So who really has the power if it requires your perception? And as that power is, the power has a gravity and it begins to sink back down through the mind into the heart. And how you understand that the world is going through this integration process as well is that, yes, there's a massive magnification of victim energy in the world. Extraordinary. But there's also a lot of activists, a lot of people that are coming up with solutions and these kinds of things. And not that that should not be happening, but that is the hero energy. It's the part that's reclaiming its power by creating shifts and changes in the world, making things better. And there's some of those heroes that internally they need life to continue showing up as a victim in order for them to have a role. So that would be an unintegrated hero. The hero isn't something that just like goes away, it just becomes integrated. It's Really, if you think about it, it's the masculine energy that no longer requires war, fighting, battle, anger, conflict in order to protect. It's the type of protection that just creates clarity around what is good for us. It's essentially boundaries. And the hero just defines the boundaries of what is acceptable or not. And it doesn't make others or itself wrong for crossing boundaries. It's just clarifying what's working and what's not working. Authenticity. It's a conversation. The masculine is learning how to have a conversation again. And the performer and the rebel are really more from the feminine side. And that integration is that, A, it's okay to perform. It's okay to change the way that you are in order to meet the demands of the moment. That's like improv acting. It just depends on where it's coming from. The rebel is basically the wounded feminine energy within ourselves that no longer wants to be controlled or manipulated. And the integration of this is, it's fine if the rebel is present, because the rebel is basically just two different ideas in the divine mind having complete autonomy. There's really nothing to rebel against. At first, there's something to rebel against, which is authority. But on the downward trajectory of integrating consciousness, the rebel is what recognizes like full autonomy. The rebel in its uninitiated state thinks that there's something, an authority of some sort, God, parents, society, whatever, in order to rebel against. But really, in the integration, the rebel really is your uniqueness. The rebel is your own flavor of consciousness. And you're the one that's cooking. You're the one that's adding all the different flavors that make up you. It takes rebelliousness to be an artist. Art is essentially rebelling against what is. For example, take a blank white canvas. When you really refine and integrate the rebel is just what's painting a picture on that canvas, rebelling against the blank state, saying, I'm just going to put this color here and that color there and this color there. That is sovereignty and autonomy, but it's the kind that's not rebelling against something. And that's why I say there is something beyond sovereignty, beyond the idea of sovereignty to be sovereign from something else. It is simply the uniqueness and the full right to be in your creative process of your own self, the rebel. And then all of this integrates into the gut, which is where presence resides. And presence is that which always receives value. And presence doesn't care. Presence doesn't actually care if you're in the victim, the performer, the hero, or the rebel, because it's recognizing that as it moves through all these different archetypes at any moment in time, throughout any part of your journey, it is receiving value from it in some way. So the true integration is not trying to integrate something as if it shouldn't be there. It's just receiving value from the way that you're showing up right now. And as you receive value, you may change your understanding of how that energy wants to be expressed. Power, pleasure, presence, and paradise. How do you want to express your power? Does power want to be expressed as a victim, always seeing everything taking away from its value when only it is the one that is deciding that is so? If yes, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that experience. It's just an experience. When things are just an experience, when you take them casually, it lightens the load so you can actually have some malleability to the experience. How do you want to express your pleasure? What brings you pleasure? Can you dare to do those things just a little bit more often? We don't have to get away from pain, but what things are we doing that continue our pain? And just being aware of that can begin to loosen the edges of pain, the pain that doesn't want to be in pain. Straight up pain is fine. It's sacred, it's medicine, stripping us of identity. And how do you want to express your presence? I think one of the most powerful ways to engage with presence and eliciting the most amount of presence in another in the fastest way possible. Literally, it's like a magic trick. You can transfer presence in a heartbeat. Someone like you'll be walking down the street and you'll engage with this practice, and this person will suddenly be transformed. Their whole everything about them will shift in a moment. And all you did was give them a compliment. Because a compliment is a transmission of presence. A compliment is something that receives so much value, there's actually an overflow of it. And I'm going to speak those words to you for you to receive, and you receive those words as what? Valuable information. And then that person feels good about themselves, even if just for a moment. Sometimes when I'm walking around, well, it's hard to do it in Brazil because I need to learn more compliments in Portuguese. But when I'm walking around a place where I know everyone speaks English, I like to look for people who look the most down in my field of awareness and pick something out about them that like really just draws my attention. Like, maybe it's their hair or just their presence or, the way they speak or whatever it is, and just compliment them. And then when they say thank you, then I'll like something else will come up and I say, and that too, it's great. Whatever feels authentic, which is easy because authentically I see a lot of value in everyone around me. But even if it was hard, I would just find something small about them. And then I'm uplifting the field of life around me and massively integrating presence. If you want to see heaven on earth, just start complimenting people. Because the more that everyone feels good about themselves, the way easier it's going to be to see the dissonance between how they feel and what's going on in the world. And they'll actually have the value inside of themselves to transform those things. Feeling bad about life, about what's going on, is just draining all the power from your being to do anything productive in providing goodness in the world. It doesn't even have to be a huge anything in order to do so. It just has to be something as simple as a compliment. One of the most powerful things that ever occurred to me is, a lot of people like who were in really abusive households or whatever, they would cut. And I don't remember ever doing that. But what I did do is I would go into the bathroom after my dad would say what he would say to me. And I would go into the bathroom and tell myself worse things about myself looking in the mirror, just so I had power over how I was feeling. So I would go into the bathroom and just say the gnarliest things about myself until I would cry. And oddly enough, that would make me feel better in a weird way, because I felt powerful in that moment. That's a weirdly integrated aspect of the victim, when I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to victimize myself that much, because there's so much power inside my being. I'm like, I'm going to be the one that victimizes myself. Okay. No one else is going to do it like I can. And then I remember just like going through massive awakenings when I was in like middle school, high school. And I just thought, oh my God, if I can look at myself in the bathroom, and I'd never heard of mirror work before at this time. I was like, if I can look at myself in the bathroom in the mirror, tell myself horrible things about myself, I bet I can do the opposite. I bet I can just say the most amazing things about myself and transform how, like, everything. And that's when I would just like, every time I passed the mirror, I'd be like, God, you're beautiful. You are amazing. You're stunning inside and out. You are the beauty that is just radiating from your being is extraordinary. And sometimes it didn't always feel authentic, but I would say it until I felt it. Because when it comes to saying really amazing things about ourselves, when it doesn't feel authentic, it doesn't mean that it's not right. It just means that we aren't used to saying that. And the feeling of authenticity is lacking because no one told us to say those things about ourselves. I used to get compliments from my parent teacher conferences. My teachers would say, yeah, he's very intelligent, but he's cocky. He's very cocky. And I would always get that feedback. And I never understood, because arrogance, cockiness to me just means seeing really amazing things about yourself, but not being able to say it or feel it about others. If you can equalize how amazing you say things about others and the amazing things that you say about yourself, that's not arrogant. It's not cocky. It's just recognizing that you have the power to like elevate the quality of what you say towards yourself and others to like there's like no end to it. There's no end to it. And people that can't compute that, which is most of society, view that as arrogance, because the idea of arrogance and cockiness and all of that helps them stay in a repressed state, thinking that they're doing something good for themselves or the world. And that's why the idea of ego being a bad thing is hilarious, because we, like, the part of us that's going to compliment others and ourselves is ego. It's that sense of self, a deeper integration of the human and the divine mixing together into one cohesive unit, indistinguishable from its parts. Just closing your eyes and taking a few deep, slow inhales and exhales.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Barrett. Could we have a 5-minute break?
Absolutely. Take a 5-minute break and then we'll do the meditation.
Okay, thank you.
If you guys have any questions or comments, you can put it in the chat. If you guys want to say anything in between. The process of initiation again. What do you mean by that? You mean over the 3 perception centers?
Yeah. And
Yeah, the process of initiation is simply just moving from original innocence, a sense of wrongness. You get fragmented out from original innocence into the heart, which expresses through the rebel and the hero. As you just continue to be hurt by life, you fragment further, because then the heart doesn't become a safe place, because the gut is okayness and original innocence. That doesn't feel safe because of the sense of wrongness. So then you have to move up into the heart. And the heart is the hero and the rebel. And then that feels safe until it no longer feels safe because it keeps getting hurt by life. And then that fragments again up into the mind. And the mind is actually it's one of the most powerful perception centers in consciousness, but typically it's used for the victim. The victim is just it's using its power to create space from everything by blaming everyone else or itself. Usually others, though. And then the initiation process is just moving into power. And that can look like reclaiming your power, but really in the end, it's understanding that nothing ever took your power away from you because you're the one that's perceiving it. And that's the power of the mind, is you are the one that is perceiving it any particular way. And you have the power to change that perception. And as that power, as you begin to change your perceptions about things, or really your perceptions about things just kind of change as you integrate more of this power, you integrate, that becomes safe, and you move into the heart. And the heart is where, we love ourselves and others, and we begin to try and shift and change the world through love, and not that you should ever stop doing that, but the angle in which it's happening begins to shift away from always, it's like the hero that's feeling bad, the hero that's pitying everything around it as a victim. No, there is a hero that's integrated, that understands and is able to actually allow others to suffer. It's a very powerful place to be. And also it's very sensitive, because it's, to be in that space requires you to pull out of codependency. And a lot of that codependency stuff is like stuck into the heart. And so giving space for others to be in their process is dissolving you of your process. And as you're dissolved of that process, you're receiving the value of everything that's happened, that is happening currently. And then the idea of process is ending, because you're just recognizing value. Process is essentially trying to get from there's not enough value here to something with more value. That's essentially a process. Presence is that which always receives value regardless of what's happening, and what's happening is always now. So there is no process. It's just receiving the value of the moment. And as that heart feels safe, then you're dropping into the gut. And the gut is just that which receives value. So at first, the journey is like you're going up through the heart, into the mind, back down through the mind, into the heart, into the gut. And once you've anchored enough consciousness in the gut, it's kind of odd, but then the initiations past this point are, you've anchored consciousness in the gut, but you continue to experience the hero, the victim, the performer, the rebel in whatever ping pong formation, going around the different perception centers of the ways of perceiving life. And it doesn't matter. You're just receiving the value of the moment. So once you've anchored enough value of basically practiced enough receiving value, then it doesn't matter where you're perceiving consciousness from. And then that's the full right to be human. And that's the place of delicious consciousness, just the right to be human. It's like, oh, the relaxation is so amazing. Like, to be upset, oh, it's so good to just like let yourself be upset. Like, that's so great. Instead of being upset and then trying to feel better about it, oh, that's the worst. But just being upset is great. And when you're allowed to be upset, like, upset happens like that. Because upset is not something to push away from. Upset is an initiation in process. And when it's okay for you to be in the initiation, when it's okay for you to be upset, when it's okay for you to be angry, when it's okay for you to be depressed, when it's okay for you to be in despair, when it's okay for you to be in sadness, you're no longer slowing down the initiation process by trying to get away from it. And you fully allow it to come into yourself. And when it fully comes into yourself, the initiation happens faster, because you're no longer stuck in time. You're stuck in time when you're pushing away from it, by it not being okay for you to feel that way. And again, the entrance is authenticity. All of this I've never even said out loud before, or even thought. So this is all new to me, and understanding the orientation of this. You just have to survive it. That's all. And that can sound arduous at times, but really you're just breathing through the moments that suck. And self-care is what you do to assist yourself through that process. And sometimes that doesn't feel available, and that's okay too. Another question is that I talked about only being able to receive once you no longer need it. You can only receive change once you no longer need change to occur. How do you get to that? Basically, by not trying to get to it. Because the idea of that being a better experience than trying to change things and make them better is just a subtler version of trying to change things in order to make them better. So it's just like the tiniest amount of hopelessness is actually the gateway into things changing, because it's your relationship to things that are changing that transforms everything. Things only change, truly change, substantially change when we no longer need them to be different. In just the example that I just gave about your emotions, how you relate to life. Your emotions in some way tell you how you're relating to life. So you don't need to change those emotions so that you're relating to life better. You just change your relationship to the emotion around it. And really it doesn't, there's no like, you don't need to like mentally run around to try and figure out how to change it. It just has to be okay for you to feel whatever you're going to feel. And again, okayness, the doorway into okayness is just authenticity. You can only truly receive joy when you no longer need it. When you no longer need things to be happy, joyful, blissful, it's much easier for happy, joy, and bliss to show up. Because you no longer require them in order to feel okay and safe. And when it's not required, you feel more safe, and safety is where those things erupt out of. And you can keep your eyes open or closed, whatever feels the most comfortable to you. Opening up the Akashic records for the nervous system as it relates to presence in paradise, the full integration, power, pleasure, presence in paradise. Asking for the most pertinent light information, downloads, activations, clearings, healings, and initiations. Related to original innocence, okayness, presence, paradise, pleasure and power. Clearing out all waves and patterns, tendencies, habits, ideas, and beliefs around needing things to change in order to feel safe and okay. Asking for an initiation and activation around okayness. Collapsing all experiences, events, timelines, relationships, memories, and the body subconscious also contracts that did not feel okay throughout all time, space, dimensions, and in every universe, played out as any character. Closing all chapters of wrongness, of sin, of missing the mark, of making errors, of misunderstanding perfection, and unsealing the original divine blueprint as it relates to original innocence, integrating it into every cell of the body, reharmonizing every atom to this original divine blueprint. Asking for the most radical, potent shift in consciousness that is most gracefully, easily, and mercifully integrated into the physical body. In equal proportion to the amount of near imperceivability to the shift occurring, allowing it to be seamless, restorative, rejuvenating, resurrecting. Closing out all timelines, soul contracts, experiences, beliefs, emotions, ideas, habits, tendencies related to the martyr, to the victim, to the performer, to the hero, to the Messiah, to the old Christed timelines that no longer represent this quantum jump, this shift, this resurrection prior to the need and creation of any moment to be resurrected from. Collapsing all of this and anything else known or unknown that may be relevant to this initiation. Now. Asking for an expansion of grounding, integrating energies for consciousness into physical form. And at this time, asking for a clearing of all that is being pushed out of the way, return to source, a source inside of us, as that which we are enters physical form. And whatever may be efficiently, joyfully, mercifully surrendered back into this source that we are. To be done now. As the light of what we are continues to integrate more fully into physical form, expressing our abundance, joy, peace, harmony, bliss in all their causeless forms. Collapsing the timeline of the experiment of separation prior to its creation. Reactivating the acknowledgement of zero separation. Collapsing all ideas, beliefs, understandings, and habits of wavering between light and dark, good and evil, right and wrong. Understanding all and seeing neither. Bringing forward a new Christed timeline. Utterly discontinuous from the past. Forever iterative, expansive, and cutting edge. No longer requires or references any past moment in order to create expansion, but simply creating the cutting edge of consciousness, the expansion of light for the sake of that. and asking for activations, integrations, and initiations for each perception center. Consciously known, subconsciously known, assisting every perception center to be activated and upgraded to its most optimal potential at this time, and asking for ever more potent activations, initiations, healings, and clearings for each of the perception centers in every moment in direct proportion to the amount of grace, ease, comfort, and mercy to the physical and all things affecting the physical, allowing consciousness from this moment forward to continue to be expanded upon in exponential speed, with effortless grace and mercy. Asking for a clearing around the solar plexus and sacral, those energies contained within this space that only understand how to create life in a safer container by shifting, changing, fixing, manipulating, or altering life or itself or its emotions or its behavior or identity self in any way, clearing out all tendencies towards this. And collapsing it prior to its creation, activating a new sense of self-center that is unrelated to the shifting experiences of reality, allowing this consciousness to anchor into the gut, reactivating the realization of the promised land, the paradise within the still, silent spaciousness that is truly unpointable to, always present, always listening, always feeling, always hearing, always seeing, always tasting, sensing, perceiving beyond the physical senses. What is even beyond consciousness itself? Recognizing consciousness as the animation of this mysterious, nothingness from which all comes from, and allowing the stillness of this perception center of paradise, allowing this spacious stillness to be anchored as the dominant force throughout every experience of reality, emotion, thought, idea, dreams, visions, physicality, emotionality, spirituality, energetic reality, cosmic reality, etheric, astral, clearing out all stresses related to dissonance between stillness and its own distortion of this reality that is the basis and foundation of all that is. Asking for a profound activation and initiation for the nervous system, into deeper stillness, emptiness, peace, silent joy, silent bliss, silent happiness, silent catharsis, allowing everything to be transformed and transmuted through this still point, which is always new, always expanding. That which doesn't require life to be different. And because of this, allowing anything to change in a moment's notice or without any at all. Anchoring safety, security, original innocence, all positive emotions, thoughts, ideas, beliefs, experiences into the still point. And purifying anything vibrating above this point. It cannot exist within this atmosphere to be returned to its wholeness. And then from that point, anchored into this still point. Recognizing that any thought, idea, belief, emotion, experience that seems opposite from this still point from this moment on is simply the sensation of what is evaporating within the light of this stillness that is the new 0 point consciousness. That you reside as. And that this resurrection is a resurrection that did not resurrect from anything in particular. More like a reservation, a reserved space within that's always been there, waiting to be recognized again. And allowing this recognition of this consciousness to be expressed, seen, felt, heard, tasted, and touched throughout every cell, atom, molecule, perception center, chakra, layer, and level of consciousness throughout every time, space, dimension, and universe, played out as any character. And collapsing all timelines, experiences, spaces, dimensions, and played out as any character that did not understand itself as this. Allowing all to be returned to this which has never been left. Closing out all soul contracts, past, present, or future, that no longer resonate with this new 0 point. Allowing all initiations in the Akashic records that can be completed at this time to be done with grace, ease, and mercy to the physical and all things affecting the physical. Allowing the body subconscious to be upgraded and updated to this new 0 point. Allowing all fluctuations and purgings to be done with the most amount of grace, ease, and mercy to the physical and all things affecting the physical. And upgrading and activating, initiating every chakra to this new 0 point. Harmonizing every perception center. To ever more brilliant forms of its original divine blueprint, and every expansion received with grace, ease, and mercy to the physical and all things affecting the physical. And may all activations, initiations, healings, clearings, awakenings, and embodiments, spoken or unspoken, known or unknown, to be given space to be received now. Activating a new collective template of consciousness for this new 0 point, with each of us as the first anchor points. Allowing each of us to receive our own unique codes of consciousness. Activations, clearings, healings, initiations, awakenings, and embodiments. As we ask the angels of integration to continue integrating these energies as we close the Akashic records. Asking the angels of grounding to continue grounding all of these activations, healings, initiations, awakenings, and embodiments. Fully merging the ethereal and the physical. Allowing psychic perception to be physical perception. Dissolving the difference. Dissolving all mechanisms of space. Providing distance between us and being touched fully by life. By allowing these bumpers of consciousness to be dissolved, We allow ourselves to completely be touched and moved by life. From this moment forward, every initiation that we go through in daily experience be received with the greatest amount of efficiency, knowing that deep stillness, that deep spaciousness within us that we are, is untouched by life. But that place that is untouched by life is interfacing with presence in physical form in a game of what if. And in this game of what if, we are allowed to be touched, moved, inspired in every emotional direction, experiencing the full spectrum, the widest band of experience that includes it all, feels it all, loves it all. And sees it all as equally valuable within the experience of the one that I am. And so it is. Just taking some deep, slow inhales and exhales. Moving your body as you see fit. I'm going to take a bathroom break for just a moment, and then you can just type any questions you have or ask me over audio when I come back.
What you were saying at the end of that meditation, I was thinking of what you'd said yesterday, that the only constant is love. And so all this transformative initiation, all the initiations, all this transformative experience is for the expansion of love, in my view, anyway, which is very reassuring and comforting, and is the way that going through the pain of the negative emotions becomes the paradise, the pleasure, the because knowing that it's what this is an initiation towards greater love, towards greater awareness of love, presence of love, expression of love, something like that in any way it might be.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, I say it often, every emotion is an initiation. And every emotion that you're experiencing as it's initiating you is moving you into greater understanding and integration of love. And the way it does that often with, you know, the emotions that we don't like feeling as much, or what we call negative emotions, is the support that we give ourselves as we're feeling whatever we're feeling. And also through the authenticity of just admitting how we're feeling and whether we like it or not, you know. So it's, yeah, it's very powerful. And then it's, you know, there's no movement towards a better experience, because the better experience comes from just you being with yourself. The experience of movement into a better experience happens in the moment that we're feeling it. But we're all like, the delusion is trying to get to a different timeline or experience where we don't feel those things, because that part of us doesn't recognize that this right now is cultivating us, that life itself is valuable however it's showing up. And it doesn't always feel good. And that's, you know, not always the point. But, you know, happiness is important, and we get to, yes, being with ourselves is the presence. Exactly. Because that's what's receiving the value of ourself. Like, I get to be with me. I get to offer myself support. I get to be authentic. And that in itself is a value. Presence is always receiving value. It doesn't mean that that value necessarily feels good. The value is oftentimes like, I feel horrible. I actually had a client recently, and, you know, they were like swept up in a lot of like spiritual modalities and things. And I just said, you know, the greatest activation of your consciousness right now is going through what you're going through right now is complaining. You need to complain, and you need to complain a lot. And they were just like, wait, what? Because that is authenticity. And you know what's funny? They started complaining on the phone with me, and they felt a lot better, because that authenticity was grounding them. And we naturally feel good when we're integrated and grounded. Even if, you know, what we're saying is not necessarily like the nicest things, we actually feel better about ourselves, because then we're actually feeling ourselves. We're not trying to create distance from ourself and this experience. We think creating distance from this experience is going to make us feel better, which is why the whole ascension thing is like, oh, we're trying to get away from this. No. Being authentic and grounding into it is actually what makes you feel better. I can feel a lot of us are still like, ooh, very sleepy and just still and quiet. But if any of you have any questions or comments, feel free to unmute yourself.
Would it be appropriate to listen to that meditation again at another point in time?
Sure. Yeah, you can listen to all of these again if you want. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't do anything other than just refreshing it or bringing it more into consciousness. That's, oftentimes a lot of the things that I'm doing are on a subconscious level. And even I don't even remember what I just said, so going, as I begin to know, like the only reason I know what I said is later when everything starts shifting, and then I'm like, wait, that's different. What's different? And then it triggers the memory of what I actually said. So yeah, going over it again would be valuable in that way. And also, yeah, just hearing it and getting it more consciously as to like what's actually shifting and changing. And but I might give it a little bit of time before doing so.
I don't think I could listen to it again for a little bit of time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, just when I was in that transmission space of that still point, I mean, it was more still than I've ever felt, just like just seeing how the ways that I've tried to move away from this experience in order to feel something, because that part didn't yet feel safe to just be completely in that dead silence. The really like, after life, this like silent space, because that's what's giving life to all of this anyways. So it's almost in a way, what we did is confronting death, right? A resurrection in itself is confronting death. And we're dying to that still silent spaciousness that's always been there. But that didn't feel comfortable because it wasn't safe. There's really no experience there. That's what, like, paradise really is not an experience. People think the promised land is an experience, and it's not. It's where experience is born from. And when we're okay with not having an experience, it transmits that power into all the things that make up experience. Safety. It transmits safety, because if the nothingness is safe and everything is born from that, then all the experiences that we can have are safe to experience. Because then we're not fluctuating between experiences. We're here watching the fluctuations. Paradise is what's watching the fluctuations occur. And presence, which is just it's like, think of it as a character. There's paradise, which is the still silent nothingness. Presence is like the light that's like shining. It's like, oh, here I am. This is the presence of that which is unspeakable. And your presence is what's receiving the value of, regardless of what's happening in this experience. Like I said before, your presence is sandwiched between two panes of glass. On one side of the glass, there's nothing happening. It's the still silent nothingness. On the other side is all the movement, all the form, all of that. And your presence is that which is in between, allowing you to interface with reality. When I say interfacing with reality, you're interfacing with all of this, and you're also interfacing with basically none of that. The nothingness and all of it, all at once. So you're sandwiched in between it. And presence can receive the value of that zero space, the nothing, the silence, and receive all the movement, whether it appears to the mind as, good or bad, pleasurable or not, pleasurable, painful. All of that is a valuable exchange because it's depersonalized. Your sense of identity is not based in the fluctuations, but the understanding that you are what's looking. What's looking is paradise. What we say I am is presence, the I am presence, as people call it. I am presence. I am presence. Sandwiched between nothing and everything. And presence receives the value of either of those experiences. So when, oftentimes when we're feeling bad or depressed, oftentimes I'm like, I'm not actually depressed. I might just need sleep because I'm tired. And a lot of the times tiredness comes from nervous system dropping. Nervous system dropping. And the energy that you're used to expending on like movement and doing things and feeling this and feeling that is not there. And so your body's like, oh, I'm tired, I'm sleepy. And you're just being reacquainted with a deeper level of stillness, which is literally what happens every time you go to sleep at night. Your nervous system is being reacquainted with stillness. And that's why going to sleep, so much happens and activates and changes in your dreams and whatnot, because your body's subconscious is at its deepest rest, its deepest rested state. And that's where things actually shift from. So when I said earlier, true change occurs when you no longer need it to change. Well, the body's subconscious can't need things to change if it's asleep. Things are changing the fastest when you're in your sleep. You can go to sleep one night, wake up the next day, and you're a completely different person because that's how much has shifted. But that occurred while you were asleep. So that's why relaxation of the nervous system is how we create change, because it's all done on your behalf. It's all effortless. And if sometimes there are places where you're going to have effort, but that effort, that drive, that passion to do whatever it is to do change, to make change, will effortlessly come to you. And if it's not effortlessly coming to you, then it's not the moment that you're designed to make those choices to change. If you really want to get an interesting perspective on, whoa, this just came out of nowhere. I totally forgot. My friend told me this a long time ago. He said that CBD dissolves the veil. Totally forgot about this until just now. He said CBD dissolves the veil. I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then I started to really understand, because the veil is the overstimulated nervous system. And CBD gives you like a window, a look into an even deeper layer of relaxation. Now, that relaxed layer that you can perceive from actually becomes more clear when you're able to reach that point on your own. But CBD basically gives you a break from the thick veil of basically all the stimulations of the nervous system that feel aggravating. And when you come into that deeper space of relaxation, it allows you to interface with life in a more natural way, even though you're adding an external thing in order to get there. But for whatever reason, I feel like that might be helpful for someone. I love CBD. Some days when my body's like, we want CBD. Take a little bit of CBD and it just changes the whole thing. And don't think taking something like CBD in order to create a more relaxed effect in your nervous system is pulling you away. This is probably why I'm bringing this up, is pulling you away from any sort of awakening. Because we see what part of, I don't know what I said, but part of what we were doing in that meditation was dissolving the barriers between human experience and divine experience, where you needing an external thing is somehow less spiritual when the external reality is made up of spirit. Like, this is all, like, people are like, oh, there's no such thing as a non-spiritual person. That doesn't exist. Everything is spirit. Anything you do is spiritual. So you requiring, like one of my favorite things, Shazandra berry, great relaxation tonic. It's a yin tonic in Chinese medicine. Super relaxing. If I feel like I need Shazandra berry to help relax my nervous system, that's not stunting the growth of consciousness in any way. It's actually assisting it. Because in those moments of relaxation, you can then realize things that permanently shift your consciousness into a more relaxed state. Love you, Josh. Just seeing your message now. See you soon.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much. That was
Yes.
amazing. Love you all.
Love you so much.
Yeah, speak soon.
Yes, talk to you soon. Ciao, ciao. Let me read this one. Yes. Yeah, some people don't feel the relaxation effects of CBD and Shazandra berry. Yeah, it might be interesting to note that CBD needs THC to actually be activated and be more effective. So if you're trying CBD that doesn't have a lot of THC or zero, some of them have literally zero, they're not as effective because the CBD is like a lock and the THC is like a key, and it like opens up the nervous system in a particular way. I don't always recommend, like plant medicines and things, because they can actually stimulate the nervous system in a way that takes a really long time to integrate. But CBD in particular is, I think, a really powerful way to acquaint yourself with deeper relaxation. And just start to, be curious about, how can I bring this more into my daily life? what am I doing when I'm this relaxed that I could do when I'm not taking CBD in order to come into this deeper space. But yeah, you might try CBD that has a little bit more THC from like indica strain, because that might help. Maybe it doesn't, who knows. But oftentimes CBD that's activated by THC is what actually makes it work, so. And there's like so many different kinds as well, so it really just depends. I just like feel totally different, calm in a new way, and I'm just so grateful for this time with you guys. And I don't know when the next class will be. I feel like I need to give myself a few weeks. I'm turning 30 in less than 4 weeks. So I'm just gonna like take some time for myself. I'm like looking at some like sweet Airbnbs somewhere on like the beach or something here in Brazil, and just I'm thinking about like completely cutting myself off from social media as well, and just like really taking some time. But I'm thinking the weekend after May 2nd is when I'll probably start my next class, and it will be some currently unknown topic, but I have like a bunch of them lined out, and it could be something that I'm not even aware of yet. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys then. And as always, feel free to message me anytime in between now and then. And yeah, if you have any more questions or anything come up about the anatomy of awakening, or even the anatomy of knowing, feel free to ask me, whatever it is, or just say hi. I love you guys so much. I'll stay on here for a couple more minutes if you guys have any questions or comments. Otherwise, we'll close it out for today.
I just want to say thank you so much, Barrett. It's been incredible. Beyond, I think in the next one, maybe you could call it Beyond Ascension.
Yes. Oh, I like that. I might actually use that. That's good. Beyond Ascension. Yeah, no, really. That's what I feel like. I love that. Yeah, I might actually use that. That sounds awesome, because it really is. That's like where we're going, like beyond ascension. Like ascension is like it's already happened. Like it's recognizing what's the happenedness of it, and ascension, when it's not under the guise of feeling better about life, but instead of interacting with life in a different way, that like like people talk about the fifth dimension, like we've done that and touched into other beyond that here in the last 4 weeks. The fifth dimension is the light. I swear the light flashes every time. We've done well beyond what I thought we were gonna do. That second session, the first session was like good, but it was like I even left that being like, really, like, okay, that's like a little, I don't know, it felt like a little, me, I love extremes. I love to like go to the edge, and the first session just felt kind of like we like barely touched our toe in the water, and I kind of was like almost like leaving me with a sense of wanting. But that second session was like, okay, all right, I see where this whole series is going now. And yeah, it's beautiful to watch, because it's like I'm doing the process and I'm watching it all happen at the same time. So to like watch these series occur, it's really cool to watch it all unfold. And And that second session was really like, holy crap, like this is going to be a really powerful series. So I'm super grateful for sharing this space with you guys, literally sharing the space and the stillness that we did. And just knowing that that is, you know, the way that I work with the energy. It's like we do the initiations, but I encode it in a way, and I was taught to do this, encode it in a way that that initiation almost has like a gravity to it, and it's constantly pulling more towards itself with ease and grace and mercy to the physical. So, you know, there's all that we received today, and yet it's encoded to continue this process into greater versions as time goes on. So yes, relaxing the nervous system is key. Yeah, absolutely. Feeling safe is 100% a part of it. And yeah, okayness and authenticity. Authenticity will allow you to feel safe. Authenticity will bring you into okayness, bring you into safety that is regardless of what is happening. Thanks, Glenn. Happy birthday. Thank you. Yes, Gina, love you so much. Yes, Kaimi, I haven't been, I think it's past that time here. I'll have to check at the time. Yeah, I would definitely be interested in seeing what he does. I love you guys so much. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank
Ciao,
you,
ciao.
Barrett. Love you. Mahalo. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous.
Thank you, everybody.
Yay.
Bye, everyone.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Mhm.